It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. This is your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso. And yes, we're getting into another serious topic because joining us this morning to continue the conversation about bullying is family and child law attorney Mandy Schuld. Now, with the rate of school bullying climbing comes to a rise in a depression and suicide. The effects of bullying is deadly, to so much so that last month our government announced a new anti-bullying act. And that's, of course, why we brought Mandy here to find out exactly what that means for our children across South Africa.
Mandy, you're awesome. Thank you so much for doing what you do. I think most importantly, you have found a way to live your purpose in the most practical space when it comes to bullying. As I understand it, a protection order can actually be filed now against a bully. So let's start from a legal framework. What tools and resources are available to us as parents and teachers when bullying occurs?
Okay. So the Protection of Harassment Act has been in place since 2011 already.
Wow.
But I know that people don't know about it because there's not a lot of talk about it.
Yeah.
But it's a very powerful act. And with that, you know, in many cases, children can't go to court themselves.
No.
But with this, they can. Normally, they are supported by their guardians or their parents to get a protection order against them. And then we need to differentiate what will then happen. Now, there's pros and cons of the Protection Act, the Harassment Act, and all those things, because, you know, it can open up a whole avenue of abuse again.
For sure.
Like in the Domestic Violence Act.
For sure, it's just rattling the beehive. Yeah.
Exactly. And then when somebody really needs that protection, the courts say, is this true or is it just another abuse of the system?
Okay.
So I think we need to be a little bit more careful of just, okay, this is now there for us.
A one-size-fits-all, yeah.
Exactly. It's not, I think, it needs to be handled with care.
Yeah.
From the child's
perspective. And if you really see, when are children really getting into maturity? When is their brains developed enough to have the perspective of, you know, I can do this or not?
Or not, for sure.
Ask a 10-year-old what's right or wrong. They don't know. They think they know, but they don't. Even if 18-year-old, you know, they just run off, this one has bullied me, but is it really bullying?
I'm 45 and I still struggle to discern, so I get that completely.
Let's unpack the age bracket to who this applies for, because I've seen some toddlers, but I mean, you can't apply this to a toddler. No. Now, how would this be different for someone under the age of 10 and for someone over the age of 10?
Yeah.
Okay,
so the Child Justice Act spells that out quite well. If a child under the age of 10 is bullying, or there's an order against a child under the age of 10, the police will come, pick up the child, and go and leave them in the hands of their parents or a guardian. But then what needs to happen is a probation officer needs to be appointed. Now, a probation officer is, of course, part of the correctional services system, which are already overworked, by the way.
And not dealing with a huge amount of empathy, I would imagine, in that space because of that workload. Yeah?
Yes, and I think the Child Justice Act is on the right path, but the implementation of that, I think that's where we fall short. It's a brilliant act, because what it's supposed to do and what the theory behind it is that the child gets investigated or an assessment gets done, the same as what will happen in Section 50 of the Children's Act. So a social worker is supposed to be appointed, questions needs to be asked, then the child needs to be sent either to therapy or counseling, conversations happen with their parents, and then the probation officer is supposed to do a written plan of how this child needs help, being put in the right program that suits this child's needs. So it's on the right path. You know, to give the mental and the psychological support that is needed.
Systemically, not just
Systemically.
from child to child, because I think
No.
often these stories turn out well because the right people were in that system when it happened.
Yes.
But the system needs to stay the same regardless of the people, like you say, implementing it.
Yes.
But all of this does speak to the fact that there is a system to play around in
Yes.
and a group consciousness around that, which is fantastic.
Yes.
What's the hack here? As a parent whose child is being bullied right now, there could be no greater challenge, I think, for any of us than feeling like our child needs our help.
Yeah.
How do we approach this in a way that will make the system work for the kids, whether that's to help change, shift the course of the direction of the bullier and help aid the child being bullied? What do we do?
You know, my philosophy is somebody that's hurting someone is hurting.
Has been hurt, yeah.
And if we can deal with that as soon as possible, as deeply as possible, we can maybe still get to a point where we can get a tipping point for that child.
Completely.
So as a parent whose child is bullying, I would say that child needs to go into therapy.
Completely, yeah.
And, you know, if you're sitting with a teenager, you get that resistance. I don't need it. I don't want it. You force a child into therapy, what
They
you're
push
going
back.
to get.
Yeah, they push back, yeah.
They're just going because they have to. And the moment that there's a have to, you're not going to get results.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that it needs some intervention in the sense where the child buys into the therapy.
The process,
You know,
sure.
the child must choose it. So we need to look and sell the benefits of that to the child so that the child says, okay, I want to give it a try.
I love the fact that it almost sounds like you're saying you don't want to work. You don't want your job to actually play out, because it would be great if it never got to this point. But I think what's starting to dawn on me now, because the second you started speaking about the system and about criminal acts and the correctional services getting involved with young children, is it that serious? Yes, it is.
Yes.
Unfortunately, young children, young adults, teenagers are committing suicide because they are being bullied. That's the link. It's as simple as that. This is big enough for us to involve every element and level of society, because that's what it's going to take to protect our children. We've got the acts, we've got the legal framework, we just need to implement it in the right way, and the child needs to be at the heart of that process. You've given us a lot to think about. Once again, thank you so much for making this your life and your purpose. If you need help, speak, talk, ask. There are resources. We've had many represented on the show today, and we'll continue to do that. And if you have a personal perspective, please share it with us this morning.